was asked to make a video detailing kind of my thoughts on what was the turning point with FMK, where Freddie went from being a fairly, positive person that was drawing positive attention from others, to being this kind of negative, hateful, ranting, angry lunatic of a person that was drawing the scorn of the martial arts community and other communities. And at that time, because I was managing the FMK YouTube channel, what was my involvement in moderating the feedback that Freddie was getting? So the way that the question was put to me, it was asking for a very explicit kind of a history. And given that we no longer have the FMK channel to refer back on, it's difficult for me to be able to pinpoint, all right, this is when I start seeing a change occurring in Freddie. A lot of people refer to the event where a teenage boy went to the FMK Kun, went to the physical location on Howard Street and challenged Freddie. And Freddie turned the boy down, turned him away, would not accept the challenge. And then that evening, he made a ranting video in his bathroom in his condo, waving a pistol around, basically saying, if anybody wants to come and try to hurt me or challenge me, this is what you're going to get. And that video did absolutely receive a lot of negative attention right away, and so much so that it seemed to scare Jenny. I think she was maybe worried that they'd have police officers knocking at their door or something like that, and they'd already had bad experiences with the police in the past. So the video was taken down shortly after it was uploaded, and then a new video was made with a toy gun instead of a real gun. But everybody saw it, because everybody saw what happened, the whole thing, because someone out there on YouTube land that was calling themselves FMK Exposed or Freddie Lee Exposed or something like that had ripped the original video off when it was still on there, and uploaded it again so that everybody could see the original if they hadn't seen it before it got pulled. So that was a big controversy for sure. Myself, I don't think that was Freddie's turning point, although that was a big reveal into his mind and where he was at. But I think the turn in Freddie, from my perspective, was already happening before that. It's hard for me to lay out this kind of the linear time scale of what was going on, but the reason that 16-year-old kid went to Howard Street to challenge Freddie was because Freddie was already trash talking mixed martial arts and jiu-jitsu and that kind of a thing. That's why the kid went there to challenge him, was because it was a response to Freddie already trash talking, already going on the negative rants. Certainly after that episode, the negativity, the anger, and all of that increased exponentially. So it's not that people are originally what, you know, the point where Freddie started being angry. Freddie started being angry and hateful and stuff before that. And then after that, after his character was revealed in that way, then he became extremely angry and vile and hateful, and yeah, and it just compounded, and we all saw what happened. Some of the things that I thought were the worst parts of it early on were the ways that Freddie was trying to assert himself, almost like defending his ego, trying to build his confidence by hurting people around him that were in positions of vulnerability. For instance, probably the very worst instance of this that I witnessed, or that, you know, I didn't actually witness, but I was privy to all the discussion around it and everything, and the fallout that happened, was that there was the training session in the park by the lake, and some little boy, maybe 5 or 6 years old, was pointing at Freddie's dad, and as they were training, and saying that he was like Jackie Chan. And I guess Freddie just absolutely blew up on this kid, and in a way that, you know, not only was it uncalled for because it's a little kid, but really what he was doing was he was asserting himself and trying to, you know, empower himself against someone who obviously was in a position of vulnerability as just a little child. So Freddie went off on this kid, and then it was so bad that some of his most dedicated students confronted him about it, that they were upset. That they were upset by it, and they thought he handled that really poorly. And then he blew up at them. In particular, a small woman named Eileen, who in the early videos was called Todai Ai. She had been a massive draw for FMK. Like, I think there were people watching the channel, you know, because they were interested in Todai Ai. She kind of built a character within the FMK channel. She had an internet presence where she was blogging about FMK, and she was drawing in other women into the Queen, her friends and sorority sisters and these kind of things. And she was really just a very positive force in FMK. But she was a small girl, and Freddie screamed at her in anger in a way that he would never do to a man who might be able to kick his ass. And he screamed at her, he made her cry, and she quit. And her boyfriend, who had been a fairly long time friend of Freddie's, a frat brother of Freddie's, quit FMK as well. And the other women who Eileen had brought into the quote quit as one of the online one of the other only paying online Todais who was a woman quit as well. And so, you know, of course, Freddie was, in his mind, Eileen had caused all of this, and she was actively trying to destroy his business. And it happened at this time that actually someone from the city of Chicago came to the Kun and started to inquire about Freddie's training rates and this kind of a thing, and learned that, you know, there were certain licenses that Freddie didn't have. There was some medical training that he should have had to run the business that he didn't have, and that he was charging different students different rates just on a whim, and that all of this is, you know, illegal business basically in Chicago. And so Freddie had to go to court over this. He was lucky his fine was not too heavy. It could have actually shut FMK down, and he did the training that he needed to do medically and this kind of thing, and got the license that he needed to do, and got the waivers that he needed, and he got, you know, a standard training rate set up and all this stuff in response. But Freddie was sure that Eileen and Y had turned him in in a manner to sabotage his business, and it did look, you know, very suspicious that this happened at this time when there was this big internal fallout. But on the other hand, sometimes karma's just a bitch, and as we saw with, you know, when he kicked me out, his whole channel got shut down, and that wasn't my doing. That was just a response from other people who looked at his channel and saw the kind of things he was saying after kicking me out of the club. So, you know, Freddie got some of his just desserts, but he was, of course, this just made him all the more angry and paranoid, and, you know, just brought him more and more into that negative zone. So that was one instance of this thing that I found really despicable. His actual confrontation of children and women. And there was another incident in the grocery store where a woman was being pushy with her, and he went off with him, and he went off on her. And, you know, I just was seeing this happening. It was always women and little children that Freddie was confronting in person. And online, his artistic expression was this kind of passive aggression where, you know, he wouldn't directly confront the men who were criticizing him, but he would address the critiques, and he would call down, you know, pretty much any martial artist he was asked about, he called them down. Pretty much any style he was asked about, he called it down. And of course, anybody that was involved in any way in mixed martial arts or jiu-jitsu, you know, had homoerotic, homosexual tendencies, and I don't know, it was just a barrage for probably a year, just a barrage of negativity, where he'd have his training videos, and then he'd have these videos about his kids, and then he'd have these videos where he's going on these crazy, angry tirades, and sometimes waving the gun. And yeah, you know, I don't know, like, I can't lay out a linear history of it, but it was certainly a different Freddie Lee than the guy who everybody was seeing in the first year or so of the FMK channel. have an impact, you know, not just on the Todai that left, but on everybody that's still stuck in there. You know, myself, Derek, even Freddie's dad, when that fallout happened with Eileen, Freddie's dad confronted him, and they had a big blowout, him and his dad. And his dad, for a while, stayed away from Freddie, because he was upset about this whole thing. You know, his son was revealed as a huge asshole, and his dad was upset about it. So a lot of people, and myself included, from that point on, from the people on the inside, to me, like, that was the real turning point. Like, to me, the guy who came to challenge Freddie was, okay, you know, whatever. And yeah, Freddie did make this video waving a gun, and it was silly, you know, stupid of him to do that. And then he got revealed online for being a little bit, you know, having this kind of behavior and this kind of thing. But from somebody from the inside, from the Todai, to me, the real strong turning point was when he began to blow up on women and children and caused this huge internal fallout where the FMK family, as it were, you know, fell apart because of this. Because before that, you know, it was very, very strong. Everybody that was involved in FMK, you know, pretty much liked each other and enjoyed the kind of the reality YouTube presence that we were creating together. And then Freddie had to go and mess that all up. And after that, he stopped trying to kind of build other characters in the FMK channel besides himself. I mean, he stopped really featuring the other Todai in the same way he had before. And part of that was because Eileen asked that the videos that she was involved in get pulled down. And I started pulling them down, and then Freddie phoned me and told me, no, you can't do that. These are my videos. This is my channel. You can't just pull stuff off without my permission. And that made sense to me, so I stopped pulling them down. But, you know, I had to let Eileen know that that's what was happening, that I wasn't allowed to pull them down. And actually at that time, Freddie had asked me to stop talking to Eileen altogether because he didn't want her finding out inadvertently through our conversations in any way anything that was happening within FMK. I did not stop talking to her, but as far as Freddie knew, I had. I maintained some minimal contact with all of those guys that dropped out still to this day. So yeah, so for me, that was the turning point. And then, of course, the workload for me in managing the FMK channel grew as exponentially as the negativity, because I mean, I think the number of people, subscribers to Freddie's channel in a short period of time jumped up like by 10,000, because everyone, you know, people were tuning in to watch this ranting lunatic. And then you started getting these people that were well, first of all, people were critiquing Freddie on his videos, writing comments and this kind of a thing, but the comments were always moderated, and for good reason, you know, to begin with, because even when Freddie wasn't being a negative angry person, we got a lot of racist comments, where people would, there's still, to my surprise, there's still a good number of people out there that, they see Freddie Lee and they start going ching chong bong, this kind of thing, right? It's really sick, there's a really sick portion of the population that was revealed to me, just flat out ugly racists, and they would comment on his channel, and so it was good that the channel was moderated. But when Freddie started being negative and angry and hateful and all this stuff, and revealing himself as this person, or at least going in that direction, there started to be negative comments that were well deserved, that weren't racist, that were intelligent but negative, and sometimes equally hateful comments. And I was not allowed to let those comments through. I tried, over that whole period, I would often, let the negative comment through if it was kind of couched in a way that wasn't going to stand out as massively offensive. If it didn't have like "eat a dick" or something like that as the last clause in the message, then I would sometimes let those on, and then Jenny would see them and she would get mad at me and write me an email and kind of talking condescendingly to me about how I have to delete those people and this kind of thing. And so I would go in and get rid of the comment. There were periods when Jenny wanted to co-manage the FMK channel with me, and Freddie would be nagged enough that he would let her do that, and then she would get on and she would start like just destroying the subscribership. She just blocking people left and right, and we'd get messages like, "Why did you block me?" I wasn't trying to be offensive. I was just giving a critical view. And on some of those occasions, actually, I went in myself and unblocked those people, and then they'd comment again, and Jenny would start seeing their comments, and then she'd be, I know she knew what was going on, and she was frustrated with me for doing those things. But I always felt like the people with intelligent criticisms, their comments should be allowed through. But I had a protocol to follow, basically, and so for the most part, those comments were not allowed. I had to delete them. I didn't block people in generally, unless what they had to say was starting to get, like, it was starting to make me work a lot. Like, some people would just go nuts, and I'd get like 100 comments from the same guy, all this ranting stuff, and that makes me work, because I have to go through and moderate each one. So then I'd be like, well, all right, enough of this guy, because this is making me work too much. Then I might go block somebody. But in general, I myself would not block anybody from commenting because they had critiqued Freddie. Freddie deserved a lot of criticism at that time, and so even though Jenny would have liked me to block everybody, I didn't feel that was good for FMK or good for anybody. Good for Freddie, good for the success of the YouTube channel, what have you. So I left a lot of that on there. Then you start getting also people that were making their own YouTube channels so that they could openly critique Freddie. And of course, the best of these is my friend Travis. And originally, Travis was criticizing not only Freddie but everybody in FMK, and so I started feeling personally offended, and being called like a zombie cult member kind of person. And so I started going on Travis's channel and going into dialogue with Travis so that he could see that no, I am actually myself, and perhaps other Todai are actually not just totally duped by this wannabe guru type. And then I was asked a lot of questions by Travis and others on his page, and I gave my honest opinions about all of those questions, in regard to all of those questions. And I did manage to get Travis's respect and the respect of some others, and so I was glad that I did that. And Travis wasn't the only one, but he was the best of them, the most intelligent quote-unquote hater that made his own page to critique Freddie on. And I had a lot of respect for Travis for doing that. I had a lot of respect for his approach and what he said motivated him and all of that, because I saw, in as much as Freddie thought that he himself was, the savior of the martial arts, because he was trying to get people to see MMA a different way. Travis was equally that kind of a hero, not only in his mind but in the minds of others, because he took Freddie on online, and everybody saw it, and he did a good job at it, and he pointed out a lot of the ridiculous aspects of Freddie Lee, and a lot of the characteristics of Freddie's behavior that were really socially despicable. And he was right, and that's what sold me on Travis, was that he was right on the dot most of the time with Freddie, with his depictions of him and his critiques of him. So that's kind of what I remember, or what kind of stands out to me as what was going on. I don't know why Freddie really started losing it, but it was kind of a convergence of things that happened all at once, where his business was threatened, his most connected Todai were falling away, and they were seeing him in a bad light, and he probably, somewhere in himself felt stupid for